tweet everyone. You might get a little pop-up.
Okay, share sound. Cool. All right, so you guys can all see my screen, right? Thumbs up.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's like a little pop-up window on the top of Zoom meetings is using the webcams. I'm not sure if you can close that or move that on the side. Do you see it?
What's going on? Why is it a black screen? Oh, it's probably an internet thing. Here we go. There we go. Okay, you guys can see that, right?
Okay.
Cool. So from student to professional. So you guys are all students, and I know looking at professional work and those kind of things, that can be a bit intimidating. You guys aren't sure how it's going to be getting into the industry. So I just wanted to show you guys a reel I put together, which is my student work actually going all the way up to my work now, just to show you guys that, you know, even though you don't think you have the skills or might not be at the place you need to be yet, it doesn't mean you should stop. You know, everyone starts from somewhere. So you have to kind of just trust that it's a process that takes a long time, and eventually you'll get there as long as you set your goals and, you know, study for it. Okay, so just let me know if there's any issues with audio or anything else.
All good.
Okay. Here we go.
can't do it. You have to. Please. What about your disease without the hex core? Promise me. Okay. Okay. I promise. We lost ourselves. Lost our dream. In the pursuit of great, we failed to do good.
There you go. I wasn't that great either. Takes a long time to get to that point, you know. So yeah. Now, yeah. So just a bit where I'm from. If you guys don't know, I'm from Toronto, Ontario, in Canada. Same place as Turning Red, if you guys saw the movie. Actually, Domi Shi went to the same school I did. So it was cool seeing like her directing a Pixar film about Toronto. But yeah, so I started in Toronto, and in high school, was about halfway through high school, I decided I wanted to try animation. I had no idea what it actually was like to do animation, but I thought it was cool and decided to start studying for it. So I studied at Sheridan College in Canada. I don't know if you guys know that school, but they had a Bachelor of Arts animation program. And so I took that program, and which was nice. I made a lot of connections there, and made a lot of friends who are all mostly working in the industry now. And yeah, it was a very traditional program, though. You guys are probably doing a lot more 3D in the 3D program you guys have in computer animation. But Sheridan, at least when I went, it was very old school. Like you had to draw to get in, and we didn't really start doing animation until our third and fourth years. It was mostly just drawing. So at that time, I just was like, yeah, 2D animation. I don't want to touch 3D. All about the traditional. And even though there were not as many jobs now for it, I just wanted to draw. And it wasn't until I graduated actually that I started doing 3D. So that walk cycle that you guys saw, the really crappy one where I didn't know how to turn off the NURBS curves in the viewport, that was the first 3D I did, and I had no idea what to do with it. I really couldn't translate my 2D skills to 3D at all. It wasn't until I started taking the Animate workshops. The first one was a body mechanics one with Alexi Wanneroy. And for those of you who don't know, Alexi is an animation supervisor at Fortiche right now on Arcane. So making that connection was really big too. Alexi is a really great teacher, and he would even contact us like after we finished the class. So it was really nice having that kind of experience. And then I also took the facial acting class with Tal Schwartzman. So in the reel I showed you guys, that there were some shots from those workshops that were there, and those were the ones that got me my first job in 3D actually. You know, they weren't at a professional level, but it was enough to get me through the door into some studios. Yeah, so just a little bit of 2D before I go into the 3D stuff. My first job out of school, you know, since I didn't do any 3D, was actually at this small studio called Pipeline Studios in Canada. And they had these shows that I worked on, Hotel Transylvania series. It was all Toon Boom. I don't know if you guys know about Toon Boom Harmony animation. That was what I did at that studio, which I really loved. Actually, I still love Toon Boom. So if you guys ever are interested in doing 2D animation, I love that program. And they actually used that software for Klaus. If you guys saw that film, you can do hand-drawn in, you can do rigged animation in it. It's a really powerful tool. But yeah, so I worked at Pipeline Studios for about 1.5 years. And then I was actually doing the animation workshops at the same time as this, which, I mean, I improved a lot, but I don't know if I fully recommend it. It definitely caused me to burn out a bit, working and taking the classes at the same time, especially in the workshops when, you know, you want to push yourself to improve, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying no to doing it, but to give you some perspective, I actually quit my job in the middle of a workshop just so I could focus on finishing my shots because I was just too burnt out, and I knew I wanted to go into feature. So I don't know if I recommend doing that, but that was something that I experienced, and it can be tough doing both things at the same time. But after that, you know, I was trying to get into any 3D studio I could. I applied everywhere. I didn't care, like if it said 5 years experience or 6 years experience. I was like, I'm getting in. I got to get into feature somehow. Somebody will be desperate enough to hire this really inexperienced animator. And I got really lucky. I remember I saw an application for Micros. If you guys know that studio, it's a French studio that has a location in Paris and also a location in Montreal in Canada. And they did, you guys probably saw Captain Underpants movie. They worked on that. They did the Paw Patrol movie. They did a bunch of, they did the SpongeBob, the newest one as well. So a lot of big projects, you know. So I applied to that studio. I remember the application said 3 years experience in feature. And I was like, I have 1 year in 2D Harmony animation. But the application said in big letters red, urgent. So I was like, okay, maybe these guys will be desperate enough. And they actually contacted me the next day. They set up an interview right away, and they asked if I could move to Montreal in like a couple of weeks. And I said, yeah, I'll come, I don't care. So yeah, that's when I went to Montreal. Really nice city. And if you guys really want to get a bunch of feature experience, or even TV, gaming, like they have everything in Montreal. It's like so many studios in one city. If you want to just get as much experience as you can, I really recommend it. That's what I did. So yeah, Micros, they hired me for a 4-month contract on this movie called Sergeant Stubby, which you guys probably didn't watch. I don't know if I don't think I'd recommend it. It's not that great, but you know, for me, it was a great experience because I met a lot of people there who were experienced in the industry. And it was my first 3D and feature production. So for me, it was great, you know, even though it wasn't like the best pipeline, and it was a lot of overtime, you know, it was the experience I wanted. You know, I wanted to get as much experience as I could. In terms of the studio in general, I think Micros has a lot of good projects, but they don't have the best pipeline. So if you guys are confident in your animation abilities and are willing to deal with a bad pipeline and broken assets and a lot of technical issues, it's a problem, but you get to work on cool things, and you know, you can still do really great animation in that environment. You just have to put in a lot of extra work. So yeah, not a bad studio, but they don't take the time for their pipeline. So then after that, I was lucky enough to land a job at On Animation right away. I managed to get the job right after my contract ended with Micros. And On Animation is also a French studio. You guys will see that trend in my industry journey a lot. But they also had a location in Montreal, and at the time they were doing the Playmobil film. This project, a lot different than Micros, very organized pipeline, very fun show. You know, I did a lot of Toon Boom Harmony animation, and so seeing the 2D textures on the face and animating that was really fun for me. That's basically how it was set up. It was all in Maya, but it was just 2D textures on the 3D model, and we had controls to animate that. So it was pretty much the same as animating in Harmony, just in a 3D environment. And the director was Lino De Salvo, who, if you guys don't know, was animation supervisor on Frozen. So it was really cool having a director that was an animator. You know, he, in terms of story, I mean, the film wasn't really a great story, but in terms of animation, there's a lot of great stuff. Lino had a really good eye for animation, so I definitely got some really great shots from that, and my level definitely jumped a lot working on that. And one thing that maybe you guys don't experience too much while you're in school because you're doing your own shots, but style on a show can be a really big learning curve. Like these characters, of course, are not realistic humans, but you know, if you shoot reference, you know, you're a realistic person, so it really tests how much you can create as an animator, which is a really big thing, especially on cartoony shows where, you can't just rely on the reference a lot, because you're not going to be able to move the characters like that. These characters, they don't even have noses. Their arms can't even move like this. Everything has to move like this. So you have to be able to come up with ways to get the intention you want without using those poses or those natural movements from real life. So yeah, so On was, I thought it was a great experience, a lot less chaotic than it was at Mikros on that production, but yeah. So if you ever get an opportunity to work there, I would recommend it. I still have a friend working there in animation, so it's a organized and it has good quality. Like, you get time to really push your shots. So after On, so this might be an experience, unfortunately, that you guys might have to deal with in animation, because there's a lot of short contracts. You might not be employed all the time. So unfortunately, after On, I was so focused on work, I didn't think of applying to places early enough. So I missed the wave of feature hires at the time. And it can be really demoralizing. A lot of people go through it in the industry. It's tough, especially when you're a junior trying to get job after job, especially in feature. So what ended up happening was I worked on some personal shots, and I ended up contacting the head of animation at Framestore on LinkedIn, because I saw he made a job post. And I wasn't fully interested in going into VFX, but I was open to trying it because I wanted some diversity in my portfolio, and I did mostly acting shots. I didn't do a lot of mechanics shots, so I was open to it. And yeah, so I contacted him on LinkedIn. He replied right away, and we set up the interview and ended up leading to a job there. And yeah, his Dark Materials was very cool project. I know like a lot of people read the books, and it was cool. It had like fighting polar bears and a bunch of animals that we could animate, and the animals could talk. So it was fun doing acting shots in VFX. But and Framestore is a good studio. One thing that I didn't enjoy with VFX is that compared to feature, how the pipeline usually works in feature, if you guys don't know, is usually you would do like a blocking pass. And once it's okayed by your leads and everything, you show it to the director, and the director gives you notes directly. Then you would move on to spline, show, and then there would be polish after. And you're in constant contact with the director, so you get your notes directly. In VFX, the director is in some other country. You have no idea where. And usually for one project, they hire like 3 or 4 VFX studios. So it's a much bigger chain of command, and you almost never get in contact with the director. Usually what happens is you do your shot notes and you go straight to spline. There's no blocking pass in VFX. So those of you who like traditional posing and blocking, none of that there. You can do it for yourself before you go to spline, but you're showing only spline passes. And how that works is you basically show your lead, and then it goes to the supervisor. And then if the supervisor says it's okay, they show the director. And then they have a secret meeting without you there. And then one day on Shotgun, you open up and you see there's notes on your shots, and you're like, okay, that's what the director says. So it's a bit of a different pipeline. Still, I'm not trying to downplay it. Like VFX, you get to work on a lot of cool things. Like you can work on Marvel movies, Disney movies, a lot of cool shows. And if you like that style of very realistic animation, go for it. I say, like, it can be super cool. Just be aware that the pipeline can be a bit tedious. So yeah, after Framestore, I actually, the first week I started at Framestore, because I was applying to a lot of places, I got contacted by Real Effects in Montreal. And I just got the job at Framestore, so I was like, I don't know, what am I doing going to a job interview? I just got this job. But I said, I've just been unemployed because I didn't plan ahead enough, and my contract at Framestore is only 4 months. So I said, what the hell, I'll go to this interview and see what happens. And I go in and, I tell them, and they were all surprised. Like I told them I just started at Framestore, and they're like, what? So what do we do? And but I told them, if the start date can be in a few months, I can start with you guys because my contract at Framestore is short. And, the HR lady wasn't like super thrilled that I didn't mention it before the interview, but she was super nice. And I actually worked with her at Migros before. She was the one who hired me at Migros. So, she said, okay, next time put it in your CV, but yeah, maybe we can hire you for after. So that's what ended up happening. I ended up going to Real Effects right after Framestore. I said, okay, see, I got another job lined up, so I'm not going to stay. And yeah, Real Effects, so they're based in Texas, but because they took the tax credits away in Texas, they decided to open up in Montreal where they had lots of tax credits. So that's why they moved their whole animation studio there. And Real Effects, if you guys don't know, they've done a bunch of projects. They did I think it's the Book of Love or A Book of Life, the Guillermo del Toro film. They did some Looney Tunes 3D animation, and they did Scoob as well, if you guys saw the Scoob movie. But I was on Rumble, which also just came out not too long ago. But yeah, so Real Effects, I really enjoyed working at. It was feature, it was what I wanted to do. And also at that time, I had already worked at a few studios in Montreal. And once you work at a few studios in Montreal, you know pretty much everyone in animation. So I came to Real Effects and I knew basically like 60% of the people already. So it was just a bunch of friends, all working at the studio. And yeah, a lot of super experienced people. There were people from Sony, people from DreamWorks, like from, a lot of very experienced people. Simon Otto, if you don't know, who was the head of animation on How to Train Your Dragon movies. He was a consultant on that movie, so I got to work with him and learn a lot from him. So Real Effects was a very good experience. They have a lot of talented animators. They still do. And the quality was good. So yeah, I think as a studio environment, it's very good, and salaries are competitive too. So yeah, I would definitely recommend the studio as well if you're interested in feature projects with high quality. I don't know if I'd recommend Rumble to watch as a movie, but there's some good animation there for sure. Yeah. So after Real Effects, so halfway through the movie, we were animating from home because of COVID, which was a crazy experience. But while I was getting to the end of production on Rumble, I got an email from Alexi, who was, if you guys remember, my iAnimate teacher way back when. And he sent me an email and he said, hey man, so I'm hiring up some animators for this project called Arcane, and here's a trailer. And he sent me the trailer they put up years ago, and I saw it and I said, wait, this project is still being made? I saw that trailer, I thought it was cool, but what happened to this thing? Like it disappeared from existence. So I said, okay, I mean, I played some League of Legends when I was younger. I know the game is really big. The characters are pretty cool. I'll give it a shot. But he told me it was a TV series. So I was like, oh, well, TV, I mean, like, what's the quota going to be? Like, how high can the quality be for the animation? So I asked him right away, I said, what are the quotas? How fast do you have to animate? And he told me it was 5 seconds a week, which if you guys don't know, in feature, the average is usually 2 to 3 seconds a week. So 5 seconds a week is like pretty close. So it's for TV, that's pretty much unheard of. Like TV, I was doing 35 seconds a week, if you guys can imagine that. So not much room for relaxing and putting in quality. But yeah, so he told me 5 seconds and he said the rigs were real time, which I was mind blown because until then, I never worked in a studio that you could play your animation in Maya real time. You always had to play blast like a million times to see your animation. So as soon as he told me that, I said, okay, so I can play my animation real time. I can save time, not doing play blast every 5 seconds. This seems like it could be good. So I said, okay, I said, let's do an interview. So yeah, we did a Zoom interview. He showed me the first sequence, one of the first sequences in episode 1 where they're climbing the rooftops, if you guys remember that. So I saw that and I was super impressed. I said, wow, this is like TV animation. This looks as good as feature. So I said, okay, but let's do these interviews with HR. Let's see what the project is like. But the other thing that I was worried about, of course, was that I was in Canada and the project was in France. So it was a bit scary knowing I would have to move all the way to a country where I didn't speak the language. And I had a permanent contract at Real Effects, so I was turning that down. So it was a bit scary. And I remember my friends telling me like, man, you're crazy. You're turning down like, you're taking less money at this job in France on this like random TV production. You're leaving feature. What are you thinking, man? And I was like, I think this project could be like a big thing. And at that time I was kind of tired of working on like these high quality feature projects that didn't have any really interesting story and that nobody was watching. And, you know, I went into animation to, work on cool projects and do things that will get people excited and get me excited. So I said, whatever, screw it. Let's just go to France in the middle of a pandemic, whatever, I'll figure it out. And I remember applying for the visa. It was the easiest visa process ever. I swear I was the only one in Montreal applying for a visa to France. They got like, my friends told me, oh, it's probably going to take a month or 2 months to get. And I applied for the visa and they gave it to me in a week. So yeah, ended up working out. So yeah, that's when I ended up not at L'Atelier, at Fortiche. So I'm sure you guys watched Arcane. So I won't like go too much into explaining it, but yeah, moving to France, it was a big jump. Definitely like some culture shock, and definitely scary in the middle of a pandemic. But I took the risk, and I really believed in the project, and so I arrived there, and first day at the studio, so for you guys who don't know, yes, this is France, Paris, the wine, the baguette, the croissant, the rats, all true, all there. But this is not where I went. I went to the south of France, in Montpellier, which is completely different from Paris, much smaller city, still very nice. And it's by the Mediterranean Sea, so much nicer weather. But yeah, what happened was Alexi contacted me because he was putting together a new animation team in the south of France to help finish the season 1 of Arcane. So our studio was just animation. We were just 15 to 20 animators in an office, like not even like a fancy office. It was just like, it could be any like generic office building, so we get there, but then they finished act 1 and 2 already by the time we arrived. So we were working on act 3. I actually only worked on the last 2 episodes. A few people who arrived earlier worked on episode 7 as well. But yeah, so I get there and they sit us down in the TV room and they're like, okay, so to catch you guys up, we're going to let you watch the first 5 episodes of the show so far. And so you guys know the characters and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, okay, let's see what this is. And at the time, I knew the quality was good, but I knew nothing about the story. And I was kind of skeptical. I'm like what video game adaptation has a good story? Like, it's League of Legends. Like, how deep is the story going to be? I wasn't really, and I've worked on so many crappy story productions before. I was like, okay, like, let's see this. I mean, you'll have some cool fight scenes, maybe, that's it. And then we watched the first 5 episodes and I'm just like sitting there looking at the other animators who were starting that day and we're like, what? Like, this is being made. This is an animated project being made and we have to work on this now. I was super happy, of course. I was like, oh, thank God I didn't move to France for nothing. But yeah, it was super cool, but also super intimidating. Like, the quality was super high and I knew it was going to be a challenge for me, especially because the style was super unique. It wasn't like the usual feature style I'd been working on, or it wasn't even VFX style. It was something in between. But yeah, so just to talk a little bit about the studio and how it was working on Arcane season 1. Pipeline, like I mentioned before, when the pipeline is bad, it's really frustrating and makes your time horrible and waste time that you could be putting into animation. And thankfully, Fortiche figured that out. They had probably the best pipeline in a studio I've ever seen. Real-time rigs, super light scenes, very few crashes, if any. Everything was ready, all the assets, layout, everything was ready for you to go. You just focused on your animation, and that's all you had to do. So that's, I mean, it seems like, you know, you always think about the creative process of animation, but this is a big deal as well. Like when you see high quality projects like Arcane and Disney movies and other things like that, the pipeline makes a big difference. So, and you can see that in the product. Directions. So I didn't talk about this too much, but, you know, getting clear and good notes from directors is huge. I mentioned that Lino was an animator on Playmobil. He was a director on Playmobil, and he was an animator, so he had a lot of animation experience. But the problem with those kind of directors can be that they focus too much on little pops and little details in the animation that at the end of the day, it's not going to take away from the performance, right? It's kind of just details. I think a good director is someone who puts the characters first and the story first, and that's the focus of the film. And I think with Arcane, the director, Christian Link, if you guys don't know, he has no visual arts background, actually. He is a composer. He's a musician. And he ended up becoming art director at Riot after working on a few projects there. And he was the director of Arcane, and he was a fantastic director. He plays the game and he knows the characters well. And the way he thinks about these characters is like real people. It's like if you were doing a documentary on a real person and had to animate it, that's how he thinks of these characters, like Vi, Jinx, all the characters in the show, like Vander, like they're all real characters with real subtleties and details. And so when he gave notes, it wasn't about the animation, it was about the performance or the expression. He'd say like, okay, this expression on Jinx, it's a little too intense for her. She should have a softer expression because it's a more intimate moment. Or he'd say, let's make Vi like react this way in the scene because she's feeling this, like those kinds of notes. And I think that's when you're trying to do character performance, those are the kind of notes you want. Time, that's a straightforward one. You get more time, you can put in more, you can push the animation more. Riot didn't hesitate to give more money for more time on the project to push the animation, so they were a great client to work with. And just a specific thing for Fortiche and Montpellier, we're just a small team. We were, like I said, we were just 15 to 20 animators, and if you like a small studio environment, you know, not too many people, it's a nice thing. It's more personal. You get to know everyone in the studio and on your team. And, you know, if you have an issue with something, you're okay with walking over. You know, if you're at a big studio, not saying it's a bad thing, like big studios can be cool too. But, you know, you don't get that personal touch. So it depends what you guys prefer in a work environment. If you like to have a big environment with a lot of people, it can be good. Or if you prefer a smaller studio, it can be fun too. And art direction, of course. Every part of the pipeline, like from comp to lighting to texturing to character design, every single thing had so much thought into it. Like Fortiche figured everything out. And I think when you see the show, you really see like how much things can be pushed. You know, when storyboard gets it, you know, they push things. And then when they give it to animation, then we push things. And then when it goes to the lighting department and comp and texturing, like they push things, and the final product like gets elevated even more. Yeah, when you have studios that kind of don't put care into certain parts of the pipeline, you know, it brings the product down. Okay, so video reference. I'm sure you guys know about this. This is not a good reference, by the way. I wouldn't use this for Jinx. Definitely off model, but cool cosplay though. I'm just going to show you guys some references we did for Arcane. because like I said, Arcane's a very realistic style. Like it's obviously pushed and stylized, but we heavily rely on reference. Actually, we have to get our reference approved before we even start animating. So I wanted to show you guys the reference to show you just how close we stick to the references and what sort of things we like change and adjust once we go into animation. So the first thing I'm going to show you guys is the reference we did for the waterfall scene with Jason Victor. These ones are just the shots I worked on. So here, yeah, I'll just play it and then I'll talk about it after.
I can't do it. You have to. Please. What about your disease without the hex code? Promise me. Okay. Okay. I promise. We lost ourselves. Lost our dream. In the pursuit of great, we failed to do good.
Yeah, so you guys could see I stuck very close to the reference. Like if I changed things, it was very minor things, like just exaggerating a few things, a few arcs and movements. But you know, for the style of the show, we wanted it to feel as real as possible but still keeping that artistic, creative stylization that you have with feature style. You know, I can't emphasize enough how important reference is. So sometimes for shots I've asked other animators who I know are really good with a certain character to do reference for me, just because I want to get that, like, the most accurate and most interesting performance you can get. And constantly, like, we'll show references and Alexi will say, like, no, you need to do it again. There's like a subtlety missing here, or there's something not accurate to the performance here. For me, like, I'm not super strong with reference, and a lot of animators aren't. Not all of us, you know, we're not actors, of course, it's not the same, but you know, it's okay to ask other people for reference, or, you know, if you have to do a bunch of takes, like, do those takes. You know, a lot of studios, they don't ask to see your references, they just let you do it on your own, which is fine. But that means you have to take it upon yourself to push yourself for your reference, because if your reference isn't good, then your animation is going to suffer, because you're going to be making creative choices that aren't the best for the performance. You know, some animators, you can just create it from your head, and that's fine, that's great. But I would say when you're starting out, try to really, like, find details in the references and try to push it as much as you can. And then later on, you know, you can start, you know, relying on it less. So I have one more reference thing to show you guys, which is probably not as useful, but I think it's fun. I put together all the references for the Sky's death sequence, which is a sequence I think reference probably isn't something you should rely on too heavily, except for a few shots near the end. But it's super funny to watch, so I thought you guys would have fun looking at it. So here's the reference for Sky's death.
Sky? No, that can't. That can't.
There you go. And fun fact, those few shots at the end, those were references done by Francesca, who's a really super talented animator we have at the studio. She's one of those annoying people that's super good at references and can get it approved on the first try. So all those references she did, super good. I constantly ask her to help me do references all the time. So it's good to have those people around in the studio. Yeah, so that's just a bit of the process we have for the show. So I'll just go a few more things on Arcane. Posing. So yes, we use reference, of course, to get like some ideas, but you can't use, like, for me, like my body's not the same as Jinx, for example, or as Vi. So, you have to take those creative differences. You have to understand the model of the character and really try to pose. It's so important, especially on this kind of show, like where characters might not be moving too much in the scene. If they're sitting and talking, like getting that golden pose can already sell the shot. Like if I show you guys these screenshots right here, you can already see like the emotions of the characters, the intent, and without any kind of animation, what's happening in the scene. So when you guys craft your own poses, like we take hours sometimes on getting like a good pose, getting the characters on model, getting the appeal. It's like you're sculpting, right? Like if you have to like adjust things and use blend shapes or something. We don't use blend shapes, we use these things called stickies. I don't know if you guys know about that. I think it's mostly an industry thing. Once you guys start working, you'll probably hear it thrown around, but stickies are basically, it's like a deformer. So you basically click anywhere on the geometry and it'll create a controller where you put the, where you clicked on the geometry, and you can basically animate it or adjust it, depending what you want to do with it. It's very handy for posing. I had a shot where it had a close-up of a hand, and hands are really easy to make look ugly in 3D. So I couldn't find a way to make it look appealing with the controllers. So I literally just put like 15 stickies all around the hand and basically remodeled it until it looked good. Yeah, and then the shot got cut. So whatever. But really, like if you want like appealing animation, sometimes just nailing down those poses can sell your shot, especially with expressions, right? If your expression, like if they're supposed to be angry but it doesn't look angry, it doesn't matter how nice your polish or like spline is, it doesn't look angry, you're not going to sell that emotion. Some hands. So a little bit of 2D. It's always good to look at drawings and 2D stuff. I don't know if you guys know about this hand sheet, the Hogarth hand sheet. If you guys watched Iron Giant, Hogarth is the boy from Iron Giant, and this hand sheet is like a classic in the industry. So if you guys like 3D, 2D, doesn't matter what you're doing, like look at this hand sheet. Like this is the golden standard for hands. Like you want these kinds of appealing shapes, not overcomplicated, but especially for 3D where we have a lot more detail and anatomy, these hands are actually fairly detailed for like a 2D style hand. It's not too cartoony, it's still very caricatured, but has those details that a realistic hand would have. So yeah, for sure, you guys can Google it, just type in Hogarth hand sheet. It's a super good reference when you're doing poses in 3D. And eyes, my favorite. Eyes are they're the windows to the soul, right? So just shaping those eyes can make a character look on model, can sell an emotion. You can compare it to like this realistic picture of eyes to like Jinx's eyes. You look at that one picture and you know exactly what emotion she has. You look at Silco and you can see like the way they did the eyes. It feels lifeless, has a lot less life than Jinx's eyes just from looking at it, not even being animated. All this stuff, is tied into posing. This sequence is, I think, a perfect thing to study for how strong posing and, selling the characters like emotions visually is, because there's no dialogue, right? You can't rely on dialogue to convey your message. You have to do it through your animation, through your poses, through your movements, through everything. So yeah, it's super, super important. especially when you're trying to do something with subtle acting intentions. And of course, this, that's the I'm going to eat a cupcake expression. You have to craft those poses. You can't just make it with the default poses from the libraries. Yeah, super important to sell the things. And just to touch on some job stuff, I don't know, you guys probably know these ones already, but I can't emphasize how important LinkedIn especially is for getting jobs. Like I said, when I got hired at Framestore, I literally just saw a job post on LinkedIn and just messaged the head of animation directly, and that led to the job. I mean, you guys can follow studios on there. You can see job posts. You can find recruiters. Recruiters are great to get in contact with because they constantly post job updates. Really, like, go on LinkedIn and try to reach out to as many studios and places as possible. Don't be too shy. Like, it'll never hurt you to reach out somewhere. The worst thing they can do is say no. I applied to so many studios and I got so many rejections. Like, you never know which is going to be the one that will accept you. So use all the tools you can. I put Instagram on there. This is not as much for animators, but for visual artists, like for 2D artists, like storyboarders or designers. So many people on there, and it's so easy to get your work out there to see. So that's just a great networking tool for you guys. I post animation on there too, but I haven't heard of too many people like networking and animation on there, but who knows, it might be possible. And you guys, so you guys are your best resource. Like, you guys are in school, you're in contact, like the people you're in school with are gonna be the future of the industry. Like, I can't tell you how many jobs I've got hired just because a friend recommended to me, or I reached out to someone and said, hey, are you guys hiring? You know, your first few jobs, you're going to meet people, and then people will go to different studios and you're going to have connections. And, you know, you make a good impression on someone, or they see that you're a hard worker, like, they'll vouch for you, you know, they'll hire you, or they'll tell people to hire you. And it's honestly the best thing. Like, people want to work with people they're comfortable with or they trust, right? With someone you don't know, you know, even if their reel is good, you don't know what they're going to be like in the work environment. People always want to hire like people they've worked with or they know. So really, like, don't underestimate like how big resources you guys are to each other. Yes, and last thing, so I wanted to show you guys the salaries I've had in the jobs. Yeah, I see some shocked expressions. I'm very, very against of not sharing salaries. I think not sharing your salaries, I mean, if you're not comfortable with it, that's okay. But I think studios try to hide salaries so they can take advantage of people. And I've seen it happen. You have to be careful when you're getting into the industry, because studios, you know, they're a business. They try to get the most bang for their buck. I can't tell you how many times I've undersold myself, or, well, actually, I can tell you how many times because it's right here. Yeah, I mean, so these are Canadian salaries, of course. You guys are in California, and I can tell you that the salaries in California are much higher. So don't worry, don't freak out when you see these salaries. It all depends on where you live, you know. The city you live in and what the standard salaries are determines how much studios will pay you, and you have to be aware of that, because you can get ripped off, or you could ask for too much and think like make a bad impression or something. I'll say for the junior salaries I have on here are pretty accurate for Canada. 50,000 a year. I'd say 45,000 is possible, but that's on the low end. I would say it's very reasonable to ask for 50 to 55 if you're a junior in TV or in feature. For mid salaries, for feature, I would say I can only talk about Montreal mostly, but I think it's pretty similar throughout Canada. I would say for a mid, I undersold myself in real effects. I could have probably gotten 70 to 75. And I would say if you're senior in Montreal, you can go from 80 to 100 pretty easily, depending on which studio. So yeah, salaries can go pretty high. I don't want you guys to think that they're super low just based on this. I just wasn't the best negotiator and didn't know at the time. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask for more. It's very normal to counteroffer. If a studio gives you an offer, send them a counter offer, even if you don't want it, why not just send, like, within reason, of course, but you could get a little more. I've countered with Real Effects before. They gave me a little more, and it's perfectly fine. You can see, I didn't mention this before, but I did some freelance animation while I was in France between season 1 and 2 of Arcane for L'Atelier. So there I was able to negotiate more because I took a senior position. And remote work, if you guys are interested, is 100% accessible at almost every studio by now, thanks to COVID. So if you guys are interested in that, you don't want to have to move, you like the city you're living in, I don't think there'd be any issue for asking for remote. They might say no. It's possible they want you in the studio, but or maybe for tax break reasons, they want you in the city that the studio is in. But especially when I think you're a more experienced animator, like a mid or senior, I think most studios would be okay with you doing remote work. So don't be afraid to ask that. Actually, even some animators on Arcane, they decide to move back to their home cities and work remote. So it's for sure accessible. You just have to ask the studios what the situation is on that. And of course, Salty Animators, if you guys don't know, has the salary page, which I 100% recommend. I've looked at it, and it really shows you like what the range is for different cities, for different studios. I think in general, I'd say that TV is on the lower end, feature is higher, and then VFX is a bit higher than feature. And then video games is probably the most lucrative if you want the highest paying jobs. Yeah, so that's how it is. But I mean, it depends on the studio, of course. If you're in a studio, if you're in a feature studio in LA, you're still going to be making more probably than a VFX studio in Montreal. So where you are also matters. It depends what you guys want. So you always have to be aware like what the cost of living is in the city and how much they're paying. Because sometimes it could be a high salary, but the cost of living is really high and it's not really more money. Yeah, anyways, that's it for my presentation. I wanted to give you guys some time for questions and things like that. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Andres.
Thank you.
We actually have a Q&A form that some people have submitted to. We could go over those first, and then we'll kind of leave it to anyone who's in the chat if they want to bring up any questions.
Sure, yeah.
Sweet.
Sounds good to me.
Let me just go ahead and grab it. 1 second. And if you guys want to fill out the form too, I'm just going to go ahead and drop it in the chat as well. Yeah, I'll go ahead and just kind of start with our first one over here. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong form. Please don't do that. My bad. I have a couple forms here, but yeah, that's the form you should be following. Sorry about that, everyone. Anyway, first question that we have is how well should I do if I want to be employed, and what kind of works should I be putting in my portfolio? I'm assuming this is coming from like an animator's perspective. But yeah.
Sure. It's good to have your own creative spin on your portfolio. You want to stand out because studios get a lot of applications. But I would say that really research where you're applying to. If there's, for example, if you want to go into feature, I would put in, I'd have your reel be pretty heavy on acting shots. Like it could be a shot like shoulder up, or if you can come up with some cool staging or camera, it's something interesting for a shot. But yeah, it would mostly be acting. When you watch a feature film, 90% of the film is talking, right? Characters talking to each other. So acting shots are probably the heaviest thing you'd want. But having at least one mechanic shot would be a great thing too, because Mechanics are always things that a lot of animators struggle with. So if you can show that you can do mechanics, even just one shot, that'll definitely be a big plus. Yeah, because you want to have a well-rounded portfolio in the end. But yeah, really study the studio you're applying to. Like if you're going to Sony, for example, and you have like a very realistic animation reel, you might not be their top pick because Sony does a lot of cartoony stuff. If you're going to VFX, same thing. Like if you just have a feature reel with a lot of acting, not much mechanics, and it's very cartoony, VFX studios will probably turn you down because they do mostly realistic and they do a lot of animal stuff too. So yeah, I would say to answer your question, I mean, it's kind of general, but I would say research where you're applying to and try to do a reel cater to that. If you want to go VFX, put a lot of creature like quadrupeds, very physical stuff. If you want feature, do acting, gaming, also would be more mechanics heavy. Yeah, and like I said before in the presentation, style is a big thing. It can be tough learning a new style. So if you can show that you do a style similar to what the studio is doing, it can really help. And Arcane, for example, if you guys are wondering, is more acting heavy.
And just on top of that, do you think like when like students are creating their portfolios too, they should try to maybe see if they have like create a variety first and then like kind of like compile them into like shorter reels, like for like the acting, like more comedy focused, action focused? Would that be like a good approach for like a like because we mostly do like animation like assignments in class and stuff, and then a lot of like just independent work as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point actually. You really don't want your reel to look like a student reel. Obviously you're students, so it's gonna be a student reel when it comes out, but yeah, when you do those assignments, I mean, I don't know what your assignments are, but like for example, a common one is like a weightlifting assignment. Like it's super important to learn. There's a reason they teach you that. But if you put like just a character picking something up, it's going to look like a student reel. But if you can come up with a creative like story to that, like maybe a character is trying to escape from a room and then there's like some heavy object blocking them and they're trying to push it out of the way, like like animation is storytelling, right? So if you can find a way to make your reel have a little story like in your shot, like not your whole reel but your individual shots have some kind of story, like this character comes from somewhere, they have some kind of background to the character, that'll really stand out, and that will make you kind of not look like a student reel but look like a professional reel, even if it's personal shots.
Cool, thank you. Going on to the next question we have here. Let's see. What kind of practices do you do every day, like when you're essentially practicing your animation craft? Do you do like any like kind of like warm-ups, exercises for yourself?
I think the only exercise I do is just nothing. I mean, not like nothing, but I mean, I think a lot of time we get so caught up in animating, you're in the shot, you're like moving keys, you're, adjusting things. Sometimes, and I know Alexi, our supervisor, does this too, is just take a break, like stop looking at it, look away, look at something else, stop thinking about it, like give yourself time to rest. I think that's one thing I learned from working at a lot of studios and doing a lot of overtime sometimes is sometimes the best thing for you to like push your shots is just to stop and to give yourself time to think. When you're animating, like you're constantly thinking about so many things, like acting choices, mechanics, design, like so many different things to think about in animation, like your brain gets fried. Some people can do it like nonstop, sure, but I think majority of people get burnt out to a point. And if you can kind of just give yourself time to rest, like even while you're working on a shot, like do some tweaks, do some things, look away from it, then come back to it, maybe go to another shot, or maybe just go away from the computer or something. I think the only exercises, I mean, the only thing I can think of really is maybe doing some doodles, like coming up with creative ideas on paper, just to get away from the computer and kind of get your mind into the creative thought process. I think that's the only thing I personally have done. But yeah, exercises, I mean, not while I'm working, but I know there's some like exercises you can do like outside of work on your own. Like if you want to do like an little eye animation, eye dart practice, you can do that. That could help. But yeah, no, just for me, drawing basically, or just looking away from the computer.
Well, thank you. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. We have another question here. It asks, what software tools are basically mandatory in order to become an animator and get into the field?
That's a good question. Well, the standard in the industry is Autodesk Maya. So if you know Maya, you're pretty much good for 99% of jobs. Even if the studio doesn't use Maya, like Blender is becoming popular now. If you guys have heard of Blender, it's becoming more and more popular, which is cool because I want Maya to have some competition so they fix their software and make it better. I'm sure we've all had Maya crashes in our experiences. Yeah, you guys know the pain. Yeah, I think Maya for sure. In 3D, you have to know pretty much. If you can learn Blender, that's great too. There's some studios that are more and more studios are using that. And for 2D, Flash is pretty standard. If you can learn Toon Boom Harmony, that's really great, especially if you want to do like some higher quality 2D stuff. Yeah, those are the main ones I can think of. There are more, like some studios have their own, like Pixar has their own, DreamWorks has their own, but those softwares, obviously you can't learn them outside the studio, so they will train you in those softwares and they have people to train you in that. So you don't have to worry about that. Learning a new software is not a problem. It's more important that you have the animation skills. But yeah, I would say Maya. If you guys are in Maya, that's perfectly fine for 3D.
Yeah, we learn Maya mostly at the school, but we do have some students who are definitely pushing for Blender. So we are kind of making somewhat of a transition to Blender. Actually, our chapter sometimes does Blender workshops too. So
Oh, that's great. You can teach me.
Sweet, yeah.
yeah, you should definitely ask our officer Matt here. He's a big he's part of the Blender gang.
Matt,
Okay, I respect that.
other officer Magic too. He does a lot of procedural texturing too in Blender. And
Yeah, I love what Blender's doing. They even have like 2D features. I've seen so many cool things. Like I mean, I'm all for it.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think
Alright.
I think Blender is super cool. I wish I was better with it personally. I've only mostly used Maya because of school, but I really should because it's free. So
It's okay. Yeah, Maya's, like I said, it's fine. And if you get hired at a Blender studio, they'll train you. I had friends who did that, so it's not a problem.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just gonna go to the next question here. Have you ever made a critical mistake during a project? How did you overcome that trial?
Oh man, one mistake. I made so many mistakes on many projects. I mean, like I said, my first project in 3D was in a feature. Like as soon as I got to the studio, I knew I didn't know what the hell I was doing in 3D. Like I made so many mistakes. Like don't be afraid to, I mean, I think every junior goes through that, like even like more experienced animators, like constantly making mistakes. Like that's just how it is. Like it's such a difficult medium, and there's so many things that could go wrong. I think everyone, like I've seen pretty much everyone I know make mistakes in studios, and like, you know, I think for me, one that always sticks in my head was actually one of my first experiences at Micros was I had like it was one of my first shots. It was not even like a shot. It was basically just plug in a run cycle and just do a head turn on this dog. And like I basically, you know, since I never animated on someone else's animation before, I just did an anim layer and I did the turn, but I wasn't aware that, like, you know, the graph editor information is not accurate because you have two like curves anyway. So the head turn was really crappy, and the supervisor kept saying like, no, make it smooth, like like it has like bumps in it. And I kept making the mistake. And then he's like, are you using anim layers? And I'm yes. And he's like, never use anim layers again. Like, you're not supposed to do, like, your curves are all wrong when you use them. And like, that basically traumatized me out of anim layers. So it was pretty scary. But you shouldn't let those experiences bring you. I was traumatized the whole time at Micros because I didn't, I was so inexperienced. You just have to accept that, you're learning, like you're a beginner, and like everyone starts somewhere. And it was okay. Like it's not like I burned the bridge with that supervisor either. He actually recommended me the frame store later on. So you just have to, like, sometimes it gets frustrating, especially when supervisors are under a lot of pressure. They can be a little bit harsh sometimes. You really have to have, I think the biggest thing if you want a successful career in animation is you got to have a thick skin. Like, you're going to get notes, you're going to get redos, you're going to have shots cut. Like, there's so many things that will bring you down. But if you can move past them and focus on the art and, get to the part where you're just animating and finish like some cool shots, like it becomes worth it. And it gets easier as you get more experience. It's harder when you're a junior and you make more mistakes, and it's intimidating because everyone's better than you. But it gets easier. You have to have that thick skin and take criticism, well.
By any chance, did you have a mentor when you were like a junior animator, or do they give you them usually, or do they kind of just expect you to kind of run out there and do your best?
Your lead is basically your mentor. Leads, basically anytime you are ready to show something, you show your lead. If you have like a technical issue or you need help, you go to your lead. They're kind of your gut. They're basically like a mentor. And I was lucky, my lead, his name was David Ward. He was actually from Australia, but he was a pretty experienced animator in VFX and feature. And he was super nice. Like, he knew how inexperienced I was, but he was super nice, and he knew how stressed I was, and he knew I thought I was going to be fired every day. So yeah, your leads are basically your mentor, and they, like, you can go to them for help. Like, they will help you. They know they have to teach you things. Like, that's pretty expected, especially with juniors.
Oh, that's cool though. At least, yeah, I've occasionally heard there could be like horror stories, but it sounds like you had a good experience being a.
Oh, I'm sure there's horror stories for sure. But in terms of mentoring, it depends. Like, sometimes leads might not give you enough feedback, and that happens sometimes, which is too bad. But you can also ask other animators. Like, if there's, like me, for example, I'm not a lead, but sometimes the juniors ask me for some help, like for pipeline things, or maybe like for some animation issues. If there's at least one nice person in the studio you can go to, they can be your mentor. People are friendly generally. So, there'll be people to help for sure.
Yeah, that's really nice though to know. I definitely know I would get intimidated if I got a job, and just.
Well, yeah, it is intimidating. I was the same.
I'm just gonna go for some of the other questions we have. I have one from Caitlin. I have a question here. She asks, how do you go about animating the subtle movements that are in Arcane? I found them super impressive and inspiring in terms of the face and expressions.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's tough. Sometimes I look at shots and I don't know what it needs, or I don't know what's missing, and then I go to like a lead or a supervisor, and then they'll give some notes. But I think it's a lot of studying. Like, when you guys watch Arcane, you're looking at work that's being looked at by multiple people. And a lot of the animators are very experienced. They've had years to train their craft, and looking at reference, looking at animation, like pushing like details. I think the best thing I can tell you guys is look at live action, like record things, like record yourself, even like for an eye blink, like record your eye blinking and your eye darting, and seeing like what little fleshy bits move. Like, does this part of the eyebrow move more, or does this one move more? Like which one, like, does one go first? Like, is there like a dip depending on like if it's a frown or if it's shock? Like, how do those little muscles move because when you put those details in, that's what make the characters feel like they have flesh and muscles underneath. It's those little details and spline when you're like adjusting those little things. And I mentioned stickies before. Sometimes we put stickies on the characters' faces. Even the one shot I showed you guys with Jace talking to Victor on the waterfall, there's no control for the Adam's apple. We just put a sticky on there and just moved it up and down, and that's the Adam's apple. And you know, you notice those things when you watch a reference. Like I looked at my reference, I saw certain things moving and I moved those. But you know, it's hard to see those until your eye is more trained. And sometimes, you know, you don't know how to create those things in Maya. Like you look at it in the reference, and then in Maya it doesn't look like that, and you don't know why. It's just experience and training your eye. Like study live action, study, look at other animators too. If you see an animator doing a cool thing with the eyes, like look what they're moving, like frame by frame those things. That's the best thing I can say with Arcane. It's studying those things, studying the reference and studying subtleties in the face and the muscles and everything. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. People have people in the chat also mentioning looking at like other actors too that are super famous. That can also help a lot too when you're trying to get certain key body language and facial expressions. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let me go ahead and I have another question here. Out of curiosity, from your experience working in France, how much of the industry is like kind of like working in 3D and CG?
Just in France or in general?
I think they mean specifically like the French animation industry, unless the person who asked the question like to clarify.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, in general, I don't know the exact numbers, but I would say 3D is definitely getting a big push. I mean, it's kind of taken over the industry for a while now. It has more money in it and more support. So I'd say it's definitely shifting to more 3D if it isn't already. Yeah, that's all I know. I can't really give a solid answer because I don't have the numbers exactly. But yeah, I'd say like 2D, I mean, like Toon Boom rigging animation might be more accessible for people coming out of school, like it was for me, like because there's a lot more positions for juniors and stuff like that. I'd say like even in 3D TV, actually, there's probably lots of positions, but I think once you go to feature VFX, it starts to narrow down and it might not be as many opportunities. But in terms of like jobs available, I'm not exactly sure.
All right, thanks. We got another question too for concerning the pipeline actually, because you mentioned how like some pipelines you worked on, it can be very difficult, and or in this case for Arcane, you know, it was a very good experience. Can you just like specify for us what makes a good or bad pipeline?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've complained about it enough. I've had enough. I remember having a meeting with Mikros after the production I worked on, and it was just a critique, like, hey guys, give us your feedback on what we can improve. And it was just constant like bashing of the studio, being like, plan your pipeline, like fix your rigs. I'd say with a pipeline, so Mikros, for an example, what they do is they bid on projects to get, and what they do is they get a cool project, and then they basically like rush it out as cheap as possible. Like they basically hire, like they don't take time to develop how they're going to make the movie. They just kind of do the same thing they always do. They hire the artists like in a wave and get them to just figure it out on the go. And the issue with that is if you have any problems, well, you don't have time to like figure out what they are. You just do the quick patch fix, and then it ends up causing issues further down the pipeline. So for example, what they do at Disney, for example, I mean, they've had their pipeline figured out and they just kind of build on it. But basically what bigger studios do, or more successful studios do, is they take maybe a year or so, like figuring out how they're going to achieve the animation or the product they want to make. And it's just a year of developing and doing that. They do the designs, they do the rigs, they test the rigs, they see like what's working, what's not. They have animators like telling like the rig artists, okay, can we have this? Can we have that? All of that stuff happens during production too. But if you take like a significant amount of time preparing that beforehand, it makes the rest of it easier. And you actually end up saving time in the production because you don't have animators waiting for hours or like a day, like for a rig to be fixed or an asset to be fixed, or for layout to send something, like, because it's already been streamlined. They have something set up and it's just go, go, go. Every department has their deadlines and you hit them. For Arcane, for example, I mean, Arcane, the season 1 took 5 years to make. A big reason of that was story changes. What happened was they were in the middle of production and then Riot decided to do some big story changes and it delayed the production. But part of that was also that Fortiche took a long time figuring out what they want to do. And the thing is, Fortiche had part of their pipeline already built because Riot hired them specifically for their style, because they did music videos for them before. And then they basically had to figure out how they were going to do Arcane, which was a bigger step than a music video. And they spent probably a year at least or more just developing the style, just figuring it out. And that's something that once you get into production, then everyone just focuses on their jobs, and you don't have like animators trying to make the layout or like trying to fix an asset or wasting time doing something that's not animation. And I think another thing is, I mean, that's the technical part of the pipeline, but there's also, like I said, with VFX, which I didn't like the pipeline, was when you have the directors not in contact with the artists, and or it's like a broken telephone kind of thing, because when you see a note written, you might interpret it different than if someone actually told you to their face what the note was. And that also wastes time, because then instead of just doing the changes properly the first time, you end up redoing it a few times and then you're wasting time. So yeah, that would be like the bad pipeline and the good pipeline comparison, how it can really affect like the day-to-day life as well as the quality of the production. I hope that.
Oh yeah, that definitely answered that. Thank you. Just look at what other questions we got. Did anyone ask in the chat yet? I don't think I see anything else.
Oh, Carlos, by the way, I think your mic is a little low. I'm not sure if that's just on my end though.
Oh, it is. Do
Oh,
Yeah.
okay?
That's
it's a
better,
little
yeah.
low.
Oh, I'm connected to a mixer here. I can just raise it a little bit.
No, you're okay. It's not a big deal, but I just wanted to let you know.
Okay. Yeah, I have that issue sometimes. If it's too loud or too soft.
You guys are also free, by the way, to just like unmute yourself and like ask questions if you like, or put them in the chat as well. But yeah, if not, we could go through the other Q&A questions, Carlos.
Sure. So, someone else asked, how is it like working for a studio that's like in another country, like the language barrier, cultural barrier, working with others from another culture, especially? Like, how difficult was it for you to kind of like adjust to working there?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely something to consider when taking a job, you know. Like I said, you know, I just kind of said, whatever, I'm going to go to France, take the job. But, you know, there's a lot of hurdles and challenges with that. Yes, I didn't speak the language. That was probably the biggest hurdle to go over, because, you know, when you're, you know, at the studio, everyone speaks English, so that's fine. But, you know, when you do your day-to-day life and like people don't speak English or don't speak English well, it can be difficult. You know, you have to pay your bills, you have to find an apartment. I mean, Fortiche had a company helping us with finding apartments, but even then, you know, the communication back and forth, like you have to either learn the language or you have to translate everything. And especially doing visas, that's also a challenge because, you know, you have to constantly renew them to stay in the country and stuff like that. It's definitely a big challenge and a thing to consider. Like I can completely understand, you know, people have told me like, oh, I don't want to go to Fortiche because I don't want to live in France and stuff like that. It's a big thing to consider and it's a big challenge. For me, the most annoying thing is the time zone difference between my family and friends in Canada and in the States. So, you know, 6 hour, 9 hour time difference, basically you can really feel separated. And you have to kind of find a group of people here in the new country that you're in. I mean, yeah, the time zone thing is probably the biggest thing for me. Language barrier, I mean, I enjoy learning French. I'm not fluent yet, but you know, I've gotten a lot better in the last 2 years, and for me, it's okay. I know a lot of people, you know, don't want to you know, find it too stressful, like trying to learn a new language and sound like an idiot in front of foreign people. But it depends, you know. I definitely won't say it was easy, but it worked out for me. It depends what someone, you know, is looking for in a job opportunity and living experience. France, I'd say in general, you know, it's more socialist. So, you know, not as much money in the industry, but more social services, you know, like free healthcare, even to foreigners. Yeah, the health system is really easy. So that was cool. Really nice. If you like sweets, they have like bakeries on every street. South of France is pretty nice weather. In Montpellier, it's almost always sunny. It's by the beach. Yeah, people in south of France are also much friendlier. So like that was definitely a big thing for me, you know, coming in as the foreigner and like, you know, trying to speak French but speaking it very poorly. You know, if I'd say most of them were very nice about it and knew like, okay, like he's trying at least. I'll give him. I'll let him try to speak. So yeah, it's I think it was a good experience for me for sure. I really liked it, but I can also see people maybe not liking it depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. I think we've got. I think we got one more question, right, Jess? If we're looking.
I think so. Yeah, there should be one more. Oh, actually, I think that was my question I have in there.
Which
Oh,
one was?
Oh, I was gonna ask, like, what do you think? So like after your time at like Forteach, like, what do you see as like your future as an animator? Do you want to go into like doing like being an animation like supervisor? Do you want to be like a director? I know that's like a really big question, but I just wonder like
wow.
what was like your
We
kind
can
of
we can
some
put this
thoughts
up
on
as
it?
like we can put this up like as a last question. You can go on as much detail as you want. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, no, it's. I definitely thought about it. Obviously, Arcane opened up a lot of opportunities for me. I've definitely been thinking about, you know, after Arcane, maybe going back into feature, maybe trying to go work in LA. I have some friends in LA, so that would be cool seeing them again. Maybe Vancouver. I haven't been to Vancouver before, and Sony has a lot of cool projects. So um, right now, in the near future, for sure, still as an animator. Probably eventually I'd go into being a lead at some points, but I know how stressful being a lead is. So I don't know if I want to make the jump yet. Leads do not have a lot of time. You basically have to animate. Usually you have reduced quotas on most productions, but even then with the reduced quotas, it's still a lot because you're constantly giving notes. I think I'd be okay with going to a lead eventually, but yeah, I don't know about yet. In the near future, I mean, directing would be cool, but if I were to direct something, I think I would have to really have a story in my head that I want to tell. I wouldn't want to just tell I don't know, like some random story that someone else came up with. It'd have to be something that was meaningful to me, because directing also is even more stressful. And if I'm going to go through, and it's pretty much like a 24/7 job, so if I would ever do that, I would have to like really be passionate about the project and really want to do it. Otherwise, I'd be fine just being a senior animator, you know, and chilling, animating my shots.
Yeah. Thank you, Andres.
Thank you.
So
Oh,
I think we've got a bit more time for maybe like one more question, one or two more questions. I'm just looking at the clock, just making sure, because we got other people who usually have classes like at 1 p.m. and we want to respect your time. No.
sure, yeah, no problem, no problem.
Okay. Um. So yeah, a little bit aside from just your work, are you watching like any animated shows? Have you been watching any animated shows lately, or just been focusing more on work?
Um, oh man, this is gonna sound bad, but actually, I don't think I've been watching any animated shows. I think I've been watching more live action stuff recently. Yeah, I can't think of I did watch Turning Red. That was probably the most recent animated thing I watched, but I haven't watched any shows. Why, is there something that you wanted to discuss? A show you wanted to talk about?
Oh no, but you mentioned Turning Red. Like we might as well talk about it. Like, what?
Oh,
Yeah, what'd you think of it?
I mean, I was super hyped for it because I mean, I said I compared it. I said it was the Canadian Luca basically to my friend, because my friend Francesca, who I mentioned, she's Italian. So when Luca came out, she was so excited and she was like, "Oh my God, it's in Italy!" And then when Turning Red was announced, I'm like, I just did the same thing back to her. I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is the Canadian Luca." um, yeah, what I thought about the film was. Is good. It's not my favorite Pixar, but I really liked it. Of course, showing Chinatown in Toronto was really cool for me and very nostalgic. Um, and I love that the whole leadership team was all women. I think when you watch the film, like the way the story is told and the way the characters interact, like you can tell that women were in the leadership roles, because it felt super unique to me, and I love that. I think in general with Pixar, they're great at telling like unique, interesting stories. Maybe not in the best way all the time, but at least they're pushing for different things. So yeah, I really love Turning Red. I think the animation style was like very cartoony, you know, maybe not my favorite, but I think it is super appropriate for the film. And yeah, I loved how it was just, the film was basically about a bunch of girls, like a bunch of really like thirsty girls just wanting to go to a boy band concert. Like, I mean, I think it was so cool showing like female sexuality at like a preteen age, especially in an animated film. I mean, they've done it in live action before, but in animated, I don't think it hasn't really been a subject people touched on.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Just seeing people talk about it online, how like the film connects more with young girls, especially since it talks more about like puberty and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff, and not a lot of like you said, not a lot of animated films or shows talk about that like casually. So it's kind of nice that they're kind of breaking that taboo.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's super cool. It gives like it's just a new story to tell that hasn't been told before.
Yeah, what definitely got me was the time period, especially because like I was born 2000, so like a bunch of stuff that the girls go with, I went through it too. I had friends who also had a Tamagotchi too, who like MP3 players, and boy bands was definitely a thing too, even though it was like probably like late 2000s, I suppose. But like,
Yeah, I mean, they were definitely. I think they were definitely referencing Backstreet Boys and NSYNC for sure.
oh yeah,
But yeah, no, definitely nostalgic to the '90s. So yeah, super cool. I mean, I was a '90s kid too, so I respected that.
yeah, for sure. Well, did anyone else have any other questions in the chat? Or yes, do you want to ask something?
Really random question. Have you been to Snakes and Lattes in Toronto? It's such a great place.
I wanted to for so long. I've been to so
Oh,
many board game cafes. I love board game cafes, but I haven't been to Snakes and Lattes. It's been thrown around by friends, but we never just went.
I've been to so many in the US and just all across, and I still say the one in Toronto, Snakes and Lattes, it's still my favorite place. Like my favorite board game cafe. You should definitely go.
Oh, damn.
I love
Shoot.
Toronto's such a great city. It's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, they have so many things there. It's so huge. Damn, now I gotta go. Do they have good bubble tea there?
They didn't have boba, but they had like really, I mean, at least when I went like a couple years ago, but they had really good coffee there. Like they made this like crazy like cold brew coffee. It's like amazing. Plus, they had like I think like beers and alcohol and stuff at nighttime too. So it's pretty chill. And they let you stay there for like hours. They don't care.
Oh, nice. Damn. Yeah, cold brew is cool. Yeah, I'm like a boba addict. Like I that's one thing I miss a lot from being in Toronto. Like they have bobas like on every street corner, and like here it's like, I mean, they have a few, but finding a good one, there's like maybe one or two I can name in Montpellier. Like they're just getting on the hype train right now.
Well, if you ever do come to LA, we have like millions of them here. So you'll get to
Oh yeah.
Oh, I know.
feel your
I
addiction.
know.
Yeah,
The few
but-
times I came, I had my fair share.
Yeah, maybe if you stop by LA, you can join us for like if the SIGGRAPH conference happens to be hosted in LA, maybe you can join us there.
Yeah, that'd be great. For sure.
I do know this year actually they're hosting it in Vancouver, both as a hybrid and
Hmm.
in person too. So you said you've never been to Vancouver, have you?
No, I have I have some friends there, but I haven't been.
Yeah, well, there you go.
An excuse. I
Thanks,
know,
SIGGRAPH.
I know. That'd be cool. Well, for sure, we'll reach out, and whenever I get to the conference, we can meet up.
Yeah, for sure. If there's one in LA, I suppose coming up.
Yeah,
we're-
Yeah, yeah.
next time should I think it'll be in Anaheim. So it's a very short drive from LA.
oh yeah,
Okay, cool.
and fairly close by to Cal State Fullerton actually. It's like about a 20-minute drive. 20, 30
Oh,
minutes.
cool.
Just. But yeah.
I'm so
So-
sorry. I'm gonna have to go on my behalf. I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording, but Carlos, you should be the host in case anyone had any couple questions left. But thank you so much for coming, Andres. I really appreciate you coming to speak with ACM SIGGRAPH, and thank you for answering all the questions. And the presentation was awesome, by the way. It was really
Thanks.
spectacular. So, yeah, thank you so much.